Just over 3 weeks ago, NBC Nightly News in the US aired a segment covering the future of solar electric vehicles, and they highlighted the role of Aptera in that marketplace. So it's no surprise for that particular segment, Aptera, which to date has been really careful about who drives its prototypes, let reporter Steve Patterson take the Aptera Gamma prototype out on the road behind the wheel, with Aptera co-founder Chris Anthony in the passenger seat. And everything looked great until about 1 minute and 20 seconds into the video, at which point we see Aptera Gamma slow down dramatically on a hill, not once, but twice, followed by Chris Anthony telling Patterson, quote, "I think you're the first person to drive this up a hill." While Chris Anthony recalls the exposure pretty positively overall, the reaction online was less uniformly good. So today, let's cover some of those issues. I am currently a pre-reservation holder for Aptera. When the founders of a company have an idea, they'll need to find funding to make it a reality. For automotive startups, that usually means at least a concept design for looks and some basic engineering for basic specs. It might even mean a proof of concept to reach a point where you can prove that your idea fundamentally works. In the world of automotive startups, automotive investors generally like something to show for their spending. They tend to abandon ship if prototypes and meaningful developments are scarce, unless, of course, you have a company CEO or press person who possesses a reality distortion field, in which case, if they're convincing enough, it really doesn't matter what the actual product is, as long as that hype train keeps chewing along. As a journalist, one of the biggest red flags to me when it comes to covering a startup is when a startup sends continual press releases about every single thing said company is doing, but won't let a journalist within 5 miles of any vehicle, prototype, or concept. I always make it clear when I am driving or riding in a prototype if there's something the company in question has told me is not quite right. But that requires the company to tell me as such. When I rode in the Aptera Alpha prototype 2+ years ago, I made it pretty darned clear that I was in a prototype and I shared the things that were working and the things that weren't. And every time I've personally interviewed someone at Aptera, it's been clear which prototype I was experiencing. I've driven in vehicles where the PR person or a company executive told me confidently that everything was perfect, when it wasn't. There was that time in 2013 when I drove a BYD E6 that was seriously not well, and as you can see on a video from this channel, was kind of dangerous to drive.
We are now doing... Oh my.
I don't know if that's being recorded, but there's
20...
there's quite a loud pitched whine coming to my ears.
Oh my. I'm sorry, that's dangerous.
How a PR person answers tough questions, or how a company CEO deals with things going wrong, is the difference between a story where you go, "Oh, that's bad luck," versus, "Oh, this company is hiding things." A good journalist, a good YouTuber, will ask the company involved to loop back when things go wrong with an explanation of why things didn't go according to plan. Simply put, when a company owns the problem and is authentic about what's going on, things are much better for the company in question. Essentially, putting your hands up and going, yeah, that shouldn't have happened, is generally a good way of starting, followed by a detail of the steps you're going to take to make sure that what just happened doesn't happen again. In my call with Chris Anthony this week, I learned a few things that I think are worth sharing. First, Aptera appears 100% owner of this issue. As I understand it, Aptera's Gamma prototype had spent most of its time in Europe between its unveiling last summer at Fully Charged Live in San Diego and filming the session with NBC Nightly News. While it was in Europe, it didn't have a whole lot of downtime, and I understand it was there without a fully completed motor cooling system in place. Obviously, spring in Europe is cooler than summer in San Diego, where Aptera is based, and upon return, Aptera was given a chance at short notice to be on NBC. As I understand it, the company literally had a few days to get ready, and on the day of filming, there were multiple trips up and down that hill in question to give NBC lots of B-roll. Steve Patterson's drive happened after the B-roll shoot had concluded, and by that time the weather and the car were pretty toasty. Chris Anthony has told me that Aptera's motors do get quite hot. They're in-wheel motors, and for extended operation, cooling is required. Aptera's engineering team presumably thought they could get away without cooling for this short film shoot, but they rolled the dice and it didn't play off. The car ended up restricting its power. Chris informed us that future media drives will wait until the cooling system is completed, and since that's a novel system, I don't know how long it's going to take before that is finished. What I've just paraphrased for you is backed up by a statement made the day after the Aptera video aired on NBC Nightly News, and I have no reason to believe anything anyone is telling me is anything other than the truth. So, should Aptera have let NBC drive it with no cooling system? Probably not. But as a startup trying to be smart with money, the chance to be on national news really might have seemed too good to pass on. Personally, I think Aptera took a risky gamble that did not pay off. I also think that it'd be wrong to not note that NBC Nightly News' coverage of Aptera and solar cars, which is the whole point of the segment, wasn't that accurate from an automotive press point of view. In discussing Aptera and its place in the market, we were shown footage of both the Lightyear Zero and the Sonos Xeon. The Lightyear Zero is no longer in production, and Lightyear is, to all intents and purposes, going through restructuring after declaring bankruptcy to try and bring a more affordable solar electric car to market. Sono Motors, meanwhile, is no longer planning to bring the Xeon to market and pivoted its business to selling solar electric vehicle components to other automakers some time ago. And yet they're both featured in this reasonably recent news piece. Nowhere in that piece does it mention either that the Aptera being driven is a prototype. And when discussing other issues, nowhere does the news piece say, this is a prototype. And look, let's be honest, editorial bias is a thing. However hard we and other journalists try not to let it control us, it does exist. So the next time you hear about a startup having a bad day, look to see if that startup has actually engaged with the issue, owned it, and has said what it's going to do to work on fixing it. Or see if they're just interested in pointing fingers and blaming someone else. That really should tell you a lot about how the company is run, how good the product is, and most importantly, how the company's executive team feels about their product. And on that note, we're done with today's video.